No, I'll send him a text.
Is it just the early birds?
It is. And I know game 5.
You watched it?
Yeah.
I was very relieved for you, especially after yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, what a game.
How was your heart rate? I was watching it and I just was holding my breath. And even my husband went, "Oh my God, poor Bradley."
Yeah, what a crazy, crazy game. And what an ending. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, yeah, it was unbelievable. But I was feeling for you, especially, I mean, it happened so quickly.
Yeah, it did. Well, the just the craziness of the back and forth for that whole game was really something, you know?
Yeah. No, I was very pleased to see today. I had it pinned to my home screen on my phone so I could glance at it all the way up until it finished.
Yeah, I started doing emails at 7 this morning so I could clear everything and just know I could watch it during the day.
That's
For whatever reason, half the time I try to watch it on the TV, I can't.
oh,
It live, it just won't play right. And then other times it just works. And like today it worked, but I never know if it will. So I watched games on the weekend. I watched both games on my laptop, which
oh,
is not as nice. But particularly they make you watch those horrible Major League Baseball replays
oh, yeah.
over and over again when you watch it on a laptop. Whereas a TV, I can zoom it past it. But today it worked,
Oh, thank goodness for that.
and I don't really know, why it chooses what it does. But
And do you have the app, the MLB app?
yeah,
I
yeah.
know my husband, he's got issues watching it too, and he uses the Google Chromecast to cast it from his phone to the TV when it doesn't work properly on the TV,
Oh yeah.
which seems to work. It's a good little way that it works for him.
I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I can't get any sound when I watch Google Chromecast.
Oh,
And I've tried every setting, and I get no sound. But
that's a pain.
yeah, I really don't know what it is. I've tried everything when I've tried it, but I've even tried the Major League Baseball. The whole thing isn't as good as basketball. The basketball NBA one is so much better.
Yeah, they've perfected it.
Yeah, even I use the Major League Baseball through my Apple TV as an Apple app, and when I was having real trouble the other day, and I thought, oh, so I downloaded Major League Baseball separately,
Yeah.
and I went through the whole login, and then I went to show the game, and I said I had to log in, and I did the whole login again, and you know how long all that takes, and then I went to watch the game, and I had to log in a third time, and I said, nope, I'm done
No,
with
done.
this.
Not meant to be.
Turned it off.
Well, that's a pain.
Yeah, but fortunately, it played really well today. I don't know what it is, but sometimes it
Yeah.
just it skips, and the sound is way off. It happens with my NBA from time to time as well. I don't really know what it is.
Sometimes it's as though the feed that is being shown here is just a terrible feed. It happens a lot when Ben watches the Packers, but only when it's on a particular station in America. It does not feed well here onto Foxtel for some reason.
Right. It may be that because certainly like we have Netflix and we have no trouble with that. And we also
Yeah.
have Apple. If we occasionally try to rent a movie from Apple, we don't have any trouble with that.
Mm.
You know? So it's just those baseball and basketball.
Just the two things that you really want to watch and have be consistent in their quality. They're the things that just are temperamental.
Yeah. I just read your email, Sandy. I'm going to record this if you'd rather not do it now. You're on mute.
No, that's okay.
It's definitely recording. I don't know what happened last time. It just didn't record. But...
No, that's okay. I've done a lot of NLP training myself anyway, so I would have been interested to see it. But no, it's okay. I need something to distract me at the moment, so this will be something that I can dive into.
All right.
So thank you.
I'll just give it another minute and see if anyone else joins in. Okay, everybody, we might make a start. Welcome back. Very sorry for those of you that missed the last session and it didn't record. It's kind of ironic, but when I ran the course in 2018, we videoed every session. Not very good videos, but it's in a bit of a dark room and the cameras, you know, in the back of the room. But we have all the sessions saved, except I can't find 2 of the 14, and one was communications, which is just the way it works. It's Murphy's. But anyway, such is life. This is where we finished on communications last week. We were talking about personal space and ownership signals and that, and we're going to move on, continuing with the whole concept of body language. Goodness, come on. Corporate dress is, you know, at the moment, all working from home and doesn't make much of a difference, but generally, the idea is to look professional. I always say better to buy less clothes that are better quality than have more variety, because most people don't really pay much attention to what you're wearing in a sense, particularly guys. They might notice a tie. Very few people notice what suit you're on. They might see if it's nice or it's not nice, but they don't notice that you wore the same suit, you know, a couple of times. So it's always better to buy better suits, buy better quality shirts. I think, you know, for guys, French cuffs look really nice. Good suits that are, you know, probably $700 and up. They show, they look good, they fit better. Making sure that your neck of your shirts aren't dog-eared and little fluffs and stuff. Get rid of those. Make sure there's not sweat stains. You know, a lot of women particularly are very into clothes and the way you look, and they'll look at all that. And if you're not presented well, they'll think, you know, how will you present my house? You know, the way you keep your car, the way you keep yourself is indications of the way in which you'll keep your campaign. So it is important. Women, the same rules apply. Obviously, dress nice. Obviously, modestly and works best. Isn't this working? Ties on or off these days. It's probably more important that whatever Fletcher's people are together reflects the same. You know, I don't think it's very good. One's got a tie on, one's got a tie off. If you're doing an auction, everyone's got their tie on. If you're doing appraisals, usually your ties are on, unless they're builders and you feel like, no, we're probably better off not to have the tie on. It really just making a decision. You know, when I'm in a meeting with a couple of directors, with bankers or prospective franchisees or something, we'll say ties on, ties off, you know, and make sure we're just color coordinated and look good. Shoes are really important. Shoes get quite scuffed, and a lot of people are really into shoes, particularly women, and women will look at your feet. And dirty shoes or scuffed shoes, you're not going to win. Timbo might seem to be a little obsessive, but he polishes his shoes really all day before every open. Before every appraisal, he makes sure his shoes look shined. You know, you just got to get those little oily brushes and give it a bit of a clean and polish them from time to time, but making sure your shoes look good and that. Business cards shouldn't be written on ever. They should not be dog-eared. I keep them in my front suit pocket in my suits, and that way they don't get messy. In my bags, they're in a little leather suit card holder, or you can have a little metal one. So they stay pristine, they look good because they're a reflection of you, particularly if you're dealing with the Asian culture. You probably can see me. Here's the business card. When you hand a business card to someone in the Asian community, it's done like this. And when they take it back, they're taking it back the same way. You look at it. If you're in a meeting where it's on the table, you put it on the table. If you're not in a meeting, you're standing up, then you put it back in the same spot where you take your cards from after you have a good look at it. The Asian community are a little bit more particular about that. Aussies, you know, throw the cards at each other and don't think too much about it. And Kiwis are probably the same. So your business cards should be kept well, never write on them. The reason we gloss front and backs of our business cards is because we don't want people writing on them. It's a really cheap thing that cheap salespeople do, and particularly Asian people don't appreciate it, but I think it's really bad form. you know, in this modern era, you probably got an iPad, but if you're someone who still has a diary or notebook, just make sure it's tidy. You don't have all sorts of paper sticking out of it. If you have one of our presentation folders, the old Thunderbirds, it should be nice and tidy. If you have a diary, again, not lots of folded pages and paper sticking out of it. There's nothing wrong with having a nice presented diary or notebook, but you don't want to give people the idea that you're messy, you're disorganized. You want it to look professional. Remember, communication, visual is a big part of it. 56% of it, you know. Before I move on to networks and client calling, any questions or comments that arose from last session or between then about body language, about communication, about the things that we covered, about DISC, any of those things before I move on?
One thing I check before I go into a presentation for any reason is I always check my teeth.
I'm sorry, I dropped my phone. I was trying to make sure it was turned off. What did you say?
I check my teeth
Yeah,
to make
Good.
sure that I haven't got anything in my teeth.
yeah, that's
I
a
know
big
it
one.
sounds silly, but you know, you should always check like your visual appearance.
Yeah, I always say to salespeople in Fletcher's Way that you should arrive wherever you're trying to get to for your appointment, for a listing appointment. We're talking about particularly 5 minutes ahead of time. You should 5 minutes before you want to be out of your car, and whether it's an open or whether it's that you get yourself looking good, calm. Make sure your teeth and your hair look good. Your glasses aren't smudged. You got what you need to go in with you. You focus, particularly on a listing appointment. You focus in the car, just sit and concentrate and think about it. Get your A game going. Be really focused before you get out and march in. So yeah, networks are an exchange of intelligence. You know, you have people who are in your network who might get you leads, who get you ideas on who you could use for different things. We email each other at work all the time. Does anyone have a good builder or plumber, or anyone know someone who can do roof cleaning? You wouldn't be recommending someone to do that who you don't know or haven't used. And if you do, you sort of say, you got to qualify it. Look, I hear they're good, but I've never used them. It's about having people around you can rely on who can help you when needed. Personal networks are come across in 4 different categories. They're either a client, someone you're trying to make a client. They are a potential referral. They could be accountants. It could be one of these. It could be people you know, people you've dealt with before. They could be a professional contact, somebody who's in the industry and out of area, or a lawyer, engineer, accountant, financial planner, all those people. And it makes more sense when you start to see it like this, that you've got your different quadrants, and what you're really trying to do is obviously move everybody into being a referrer for your network. Obviously, you're trying to move people over to be clients, but what you're trying to do is recognize that the people you've dealt with should want to refer to you. The professionals out there that you know should want to refer to you, and people who you've been helping, who you may not have ever sold for, but you've helped them, often will refer you. Will say, I didn't buy from this person, or they didn't sell from me, but they were really helpful, and I would really recommend them. If I was going to sell now, I'd be using them. And so, you look at the people you have in your network, and you sort of figure out, where are you? Which quadrant do you live in? And then you start to think about, given who they are, how often should I be in contact with them? Is it a weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly? And the more influential they are, the more leads you get from them, then the more you would say more frequently. Somebody who's given you some referrals, you want to be in touch with. And somebody who gives you really good referrals, you want to continue to thank them and reward them more and more each time, so they keep wanting to come back and do it again. And so you start to think about that sort of frequency. So when you do that, it's really about how influential are they? How many people can they refer to you? How many people they see out there? Financial planners often know people what they're going to do before they do it. Mortgage brokers, often people are talking to their mortgage brokers before they talk to us. You never know where it might come from. It just, you got to think about these people and think, well, how often should I be in touch with them? Guidelines are, giving precedes receiving. When you help somebody, they're going to be helpful back to you. It's usually just about information, not deals. People don't give you a client; they give you an opportunity to win a client over. That's why when we do the $200 gift vouchers to somebody who gives us a referral to an exclusive listing, we don't base it on getting the sale. We give it to them when we get the listing because they've given us information. We've gone and listed it. Great. Here's your reward. It's up to us to now sell it. It's not about deals. It's usually about information. You really got to try with your networks, because if you dud somebody, you don't return their calls, you don't help them, you give them a really bad person that they deal with and have problems with, they're not going to trust you again, and they're not going to help you again. So your networks are important to nurture and care about. So you base it on things like reputation. The DMU is really pretty cool, which we're going to cover in a moment. Your clients need to know what you do. They need to know why you're in the business, how they can, how you go about doing your business, how they can help you. If your clients or your network doesn't know what you do, or if you happen to move to Fletcher's and you haven't been in touch with them, how do they know? Your clients should understand your points of difference in basic terms. They should know what you do. Sorry, your contacts, if I said clients. You should know where you're getting your leads from, because you might forget that somebody's giving you, like, this is the third one they've given me now. I'm going to give them a voucher to Crown Casino this time instead of a $200 thing, because they're really looking after me. If you don't record them yourself and you don't remember, it's also useful to know where your leads are coming from, even more broadly. You have to build this into your ideal weeks, into your regular prospecting plan to talk to these people, particularly the more influential they are. The DMU, I think, is a really brilliant concept for salespeople to really understand. And these are the decision-making process of everybody who plays a part in either buying or using the experience. And we'll sort of go through it and break it down into what the PERG means. But the benefits of understanding the DMU is that you have a much greater chance of succeeding. And you'll understand that as we come to it. Just bear with me a second. For those of you that don't know, apparently Andrews is going to speak on TV in the next couple minutes. I'm just going to take a 1-minute break and just set the recorder up so I can see it after. Okay, be right back. Well, that was a waste of time. Or all this wind, I think something's happened to our antenna. Can't even. I never watched TV. Can't even get it to turn on properly. Obviously, the more you know about the DMU, the more successful you are going to be. You talk to the right people at the right time. These are so. You really want to know what each player in the PERG, as we'll come to what they're known as in the DMU, are. What role do they play? And the more you understand that, the easier it is to win. And you'll understand that as you see it. So you've got people who fall into 4 categories, and that's PERG, P-U-R-G, is paying, using, recommending, or guiding. And sometimes they overlap, of course, but we'll explain what each is. The paying person gives the final approval to the funds being spent. It might be someone else who sources the agent or who sources homes. And statistically, we believe that women play a major role in sourcing the next property they're going to buy and the short list of agents they want to see. But that doesn't mean that they're alone in making the decision. It may well be that they require a partner, or in reverse, the husband sources it and the wife makes a final decision to say, yeah, let's do it. Or both of them might be the paying decision makers. It's who's going to agree in the end of the day to say, yes, I'll make this investment. What they care about, let's say you're running a campaign, and in this situation, the husband's a stay-home husband and the wife works all day, and the husband's going to be the one you deal with. The husband you're dealing with and the wife that you're not dealing with, the wife's more likely, if she's like the breadwinner, is going to be more focused on the money rather than the service, because they're not dealing with the service and you are. And that's the point of it. The person paying isn't necessarily the one using. Again, they can overlap, and they're going to be far more focused on return on investment. And when you get to when we get to the user, this is the person who's going to be at home working with the estate agent, and they're going to think much more about the actual performance and what it's being told that they're going to do. And because I'm going to have to work with this person, and I've got to like them, and I've got to believe in the plan and all of that, much more so than the person paying. There's a job to be done. How's it going to work for me? Do I really want this? Do I want to talk to this person all the time? Are they the one I want to have in my house all the time? So the user has very different sort of things that they look at than the person who's paying. Recommending is giving usually some sort of technical approval. It could be that, and the next one, which we look at, which is guiding, is they're similar, but potentially a little different. They want to know that it's meeting the specifications. They might be a lawyer who's looking after, or a trustee of an estate. Often elderly people, we get lawyers who are wanting to review the authority and give the okay that everything's fine. And these are usually people who somebody goes to because they could be, in this situation, they could be a vendor advocate, more and more of those. It could be a lawyer they give it out to. And these people need to satisfy themselves that it meets the brief. Does it meet the specifications? What's the proposal look like? Yes, I'm satisfied that it meets the brief. It's the sort of commission we talked about, etc. It's on now if you wanted to try to watch it. And the recommending is not dissimilar, but what I find the recommending or guiding, sorry, the guiding tends to be, in my view, for older people, their children, and for younger people, their parents, who they often want to go and talk to and get involved. You know, not very many senior people wouldn't involve their children in deciding which agent to use and making sure they're not getting ripped off and all those sort of things. And again, young people, my daughter, you know, in buying her house, or Jesus, she just sold her house last week. She's talking to me all the time about it. I'm not making the decision, but I'm helping her. I helped her with the agent, and she's in LA, and the actual proposal and what they were talking about on the pricing. Um, and that's what a guider does is, you know, again, they're looking at the proposal, does it meet the specifications? Um, I'm going to try to help influence your decision because that's what I do. So when a agent says to me, it's a marital, and the wife has called us in, and I say, have you had a chance to speak to the husband? No, it's quite bitter, and they're not really talking. And I say, well, you're not going to win the listing. If you can't speak to the people who are the primary decision makers or influencing the decision, then you're not going to win. If you have to get on the phone, get on a Zoom, get in to see somebody in person to see both parties or all parties involved, if there's a trustee or an executor or a vendor advocate being involved and you're not speaking to them and you're not trying to get them on side, you're not going to win, because they'll see that their role is to be that guider, that recommender, and yet they haven't seen you or had much to do with you, then they're not going to feel that they can. If it's the paying person, they're going to want to be satisfied that they put a face to it all, that it's proper. You know, it makes sense that the people who have an involvement in the decision need to be part of the process of vetting. And you know, if somebody said to me, "Oh, I'm, you know, an elderly person, my daughter's helping me," I would say, "I'd like to meet your daughter. Can we arrange that?" And vice versa with, you know, younger people with their parents. You know, if there's two vendors and one says, "No, it's okay, I'm going to do it," you got to push to get to see both vendors, because invariably when they don't hire you, they say, "Oh, my sister decided she preferred someone else." And you want to do your best without forcing it and whatever to get to that situation where you can. Um, any questions before I move on about the PERG and about decision-making unit? Client-tailored call is pretty cool. It's just a simple way that you establish talking to people. Remember that particularly when you're on the phone, you don't have some body language going for you. You don't have vocal as well. You know, obviously the first thing you're trying to do is establish rapport with people, get on the right wavelength, develop some interest in the conversation to get them to want to continue. Try to figure out their situation and needs, if they have any for your service. You would be summarizing and qualifying as you can. Eventually, you get to the point where you're presenting and closing, and you know, the whole rapport thing is very valuable. I'm going to give you a Chris Helderism, which I think is fantastic, and I've watched it in practice so many times, and it absolutely is how things play out in the whole rapport establishing thing, whether you're mostly in person, but whether you're on the phone or you meet somebody somewhere and trying to develop some rapport. It's a really good tool. It's called Ford. I don't have notes in here for you, but FORD. And it stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So family, occupation, recreation, dreams, Ford. So when you have a conversation with someone, let's say that you're at your child's school and they're having a parent cocktail evening. You don't really going to start on occupation. You're more likely to start on family. Oh, so, you know, what are your kids that are at this school? Oh, I have a daughter and a son in year 3. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, maybe they're in the same class, whatever, you work it out. You start with family, and then you're having the conversation with you and go, oh, That's great. What do you do? Like, what sort of recreation do you guys like to do yourself or as a family? And then you might get on to occupation. Say, oh, all right. And what do you do for a living? And you find some common ground. And ultimately, you might get to the point, it's a good conversation. Say, hey, where's the next holiday? What do you guys like to do when you're not working? What do you do for, to live your dreams, that sort of thing. If you have this conversation, if you're in a work situation at a cocktail party with workers, you're more likely to start more with occupation rather than family. You're more likely to say, oh, what firm are you with? Or what industry are you in? Oh, and what do you do there? Great. And do you have family? Yep. Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, what do you do to, when you're not working? How do you exercise or relax? What do you do? And you just work your way through it. And it's so funny because when you're in a conversation and you see people who don't know each other, this is what they do. Watch it and you listen and you go, wow, they've just done Ford in any order. And it's the order that it comes up with. If you're meeting someone on a boat and you're out on a trip to Antarctica, you're more likely to start with dreams than you are to start with occupation or family. Wow, how long have you been wanting to do this? Talk about it. What other, big things have you done like this? Oh, and what sort of family do you have? And then but Ford is a great way to establish rapport with people. The close is this thing that, a lot of people struggle with. Doesn't have to be. Really, if you do a really good call, the ideal close is that the client closes for you because you've done the things that you need to do, that you've gone along all the way through, you've done your trial closings, you're on the same wavelength, all the things we talked about, earlier, particularly in the cycle of being in the right decision-making cycle. And know whether it's right or wrong. The thing is to know that the time frame is really important. Always ask that. What's your plans for making the decision? When do you hope to have appointed an agent? When do you hope to have decided whether you're going to buy or sell first? So you have some idea of what they're thinking. And usually our view is cut it in half, whatever they tell you. If they say, oh, we're probably thinking about 3 to 6 months, get in touch with them again in about 4 to 5 weeks. Just keep talking, because they often bring that forward. List scripts are just a quick introduction that you should have to when you meet people. You meet someone that the idea is you're in a lift and the bell closes and you sort of make eye contact and you go, oh, hi, and so don't I recognize you? Yeah, I'm Bradley Brown from Fletcher's. And you? And and they say, yeah, what do you do? And your lift script is, in my case, I'm Bradley Brown, I'm CEO of Fletcher's. I run our organization. We have 23 offices. What do you do? It's just a short, sharp, get confidence. I'm in residential sales. I focus in the eastern suburbs. I've been doing it for the last 12 years. What about you? It's just nice, short, brief way to win business, short and sweet and to the point. Any questions about any of that, guys? Well, I hope you enjoyed the whole communications and DISC. Again, sorry for those that missed out and we don't have a tape for them, but eventually we'll have one. We're going to go on to Maxwell, who, like Covey, very different, but also very inspiring, really good material. It's a little bit more, it's kind of in one hand, a little more mundane because it's steps 1 through 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And whenever you do lists like that, it can be a little bit, but each one's different and they're interesting, but they're a little bit more almost practical compared to the Covey stuff, which is a little bit more theoretical. This is real steps to be effective at leading and managing people. And that's why I included as part of the leadership with Covey, because I think Covey sets us a really good framework. And then the Maxwell helps fill in a lot of the pieces. Like Covey, he's also very religious. He's a minister. I'm not religious at all, and he doesn't get into it, but you can see that background at times when you hear him talk. But both of them come from that discipline of high values and that they come from. So we're going to get into John C. Maxwell, the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. Follow them and people will follow you. And it's all about how you get people to want to be
Leadership
led.
is leadership no matter where you go or what you do. Times change. Technology marches forward. Cultures vary from place to place. But the true principles of leadership are constant. They are irrefutable and stand the test of time. As you listen to the following laws, I'd like you to keep in mind 4 ideas. First, the laws can be learned. Some are easier to understand and apply than others, but every one of them can be acquired. Second, the laws can stand alone. Each law complements all the others, but you don't need one in order to learn another. Third, the laws carry consequences with them. Apply the laws and people will follow you. Violate or ignore them, and you will not be able to lead others. Fourth, these laws are the foundation of leadership. Once you learn the principles, you have to practice them and apply them to your life. Whether you are a follower who is just beginning to discover the impact of leadership, or a natural leader who already has followers, you can become a better leader. Some laws you may already practice effectively. Other laws will expose weaknesses you didn't know you had. But the greater the number of laws you learn, the better leader you will become. Each law is like a tool, ready to be picked up and used to help you achieve your dreams and add value to other people's lives. Pick up even one, and you will become a better leader. Learn them all, and the people will gladly follow you. Now let's open the toolbox together. Leadership law number 1, the law of the lid. Leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. I often open my leadership conferences by explaining the law of the lid because it helps people understand the value of leadership. If you can get a handle on this law, you will see the incredible impact of leadership on every aspect of life. So here it is. Leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. The lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid on his potential. The higher the leadership, the greater the effectiveness. To give you an example, if your leadership rates an 8, then your effectiveness can never be greater than a 7.
All right, that's just a bit of an overview. Hang on, I think there was 2 videos. Somehow I skipped through the second one, sorry.
Have you ever heard a motivational speaker tell you that attitude is everything? I'll bet you have. I've heard many say that. In fact, they'll say something like, if you can believe it, you can achieve it. And that never quite rang true with me. So I began to press the issue, and I have come to the conclusion that attitude isn't everything. Now, I'm not disclaiming or in any way being disparaging about attitude, because I think attitude is very important. But if anybody comes up to you, tells you that attitude is everything, I don't buy into that. That's not true. For example, attitude can't replace incompetence. If you're incompetent, you can be very happy, but you can still be very unsuccessful. Now, here's what I do know. Attitude isn't everything, but attitude is the main thing that'll make a difference in your life. And because I believe that, I wrote the book, The Difference Maker. You see, that's what attitude is. Attitude is the difference maker. You have 2 people side by side that you're thinking about employing in your company. Both of them have the same background, same job description, education, experience. I mean, you could almost flip a coin and say, I could hire the one on the right or I could hire the one on the left. But one has a great attitude and one has a bad attitude. Now, who are you going to hire? You're going to hire the person with a great attitude. Why? Because it was the difference maker. It is true that your attitude will determine your altitude. And in the difference maker, I talk about 5 areas that usually pull down or sink our attitude. I mean, I'm talking about fear, failure, discouragement, change, things changing all around us in the process until we can't keep up. I'm talking about things that have a tendency to destroy the attitude. And I talk about those 5 things, and I tell you how to have an attitude that will help you overcome each one of them. So remember, attitude isn't everything, but it is the main thing. It is the difference maker in your life.
All right, our first law is the law of the lid, and your leadership ability will determine your level of effectiveness ultimately. And that the idea is that, yeah, if you just want to be a worker and do your own thing, that's fine. But if you're talking about having some sort of leverage, having people under you, being in a position of rising through from supervisor to manager to whatever, then your leadership effectiveness, your ability to get other people to do things and to work effectively, in their role, will determine how well you go. And the higher you want to climb, the more leadership skills you need. Because you can only ultimately do so much yourself. And so as if you want to go from a one-man milk bar to a 3-man convenience store, then you got to start to manage staff. And so many people I know, just hate the whole idea of having to manage people, and they don't want any employees. And as soon as they get employees, they find it starts to be a real problem. And somebody one day who's very successful came to see me and said that they wanted to change career paths and be a CEO like me. And I said, oh, that's very nice. And, tell me about it. And I said, I remember when you had someone working for you, and they said, oh, I hated it. I hated having somebody work for me. It was just such a drain on my time. And I said, but you want to be a CEO and lead other people. You had trouble leading one person. How's that going to work out for you? Think about it. It's what we do all day. Your effectiveness, ultimately, as we know with Covey, is only going to be as good as your ability to lead. And if you can't get people to follow you, if you can't help people do their job well, if you can't get people to want to work for you, if you can't get people to want to stay employed by you, then your ability to, as he calls it, lift the lid, make it bigger, is really difficult. And when and I've worked over time with leaders who constantly have staff turnover, whether they be a salesperson with PAs, a partner in my previous life with their solicitors or their accountants, and they just keep leaving and leaving. You have the people you deserve to have, basically. And if you can't keep people, it's yourself. And you got to look at the way you do things. And you got to get people around you who can help you to more effectively lead, to be successful. They've got to tame your reds, and they've got to listen, and they've got to learn, and they've got to grow, or else they just continually repeat it. They just keep having a changeover of staff, and they never grow, and they never get it bigger. You guys were emailed today a Word doc that has task sheets for you for Maxwell. This PowerPoint was in the diary note, but I'd like you to just think for a minute of those people who aspired you to do more and achieve more, and what did they actually do? So I'm going to get you to spend a minute, and then we're going to actually talk about what, and you think at the same time, what did you do to inspire others? How have you done that as well? Have you learned from them and applied it? And then we're going to talk about that for a minute. So just take a couple minutes, think about those people in your life, teachers, employers, coaches, who really got you to do better, to lift yourself, to achieve your potential, to grow, develop. What did they do? How did they do it? How did they get you motivated? And how do you do the same for others? And we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, for those Victorians, pubs and shops and things are opening tomorrow. We still have 25K radius. He hasn't spoken yet about personal contact with people in homes and that. That's apparently going to be tomorrow. We don't know about going back to the offices yet. If you're in, I bet they say no, but that hasn't been spoken about yet today. All right, who'd like to share with me both sides of the equation, because it's hard to go on and off with your mics and that. So, you know, like who's inspired you and why, and how do you inspire people, and, you know, go for it.
I'll go, Bradley. As far as who's inspired me, I put down my dad, and that's just by leading by example, really. He's got a really great work ethic, really good standards. He doesn't set a low bar when it comes to his expectations. That's for himself and for others around him. So I've always admired his approach to that, especially in a work sense. That was the main one that came to mind for me. And as far as me inspiring others, I don't know. I feel like you don't really know if you do that unless someone tells you or makes a point of telling you that. So I don't know if I do that or not.
I do, because you inspire me, because you constantly are proactive in your work and you send me stuff that helps me do things better, and you take that initiative and stuff. And to be frank, that's inspiring, and that's what helps me do things. You know, you raise questions or you provide answers, and that's really helpful. And I believe you are very inspiring as a person.
Thank you. That's so nice.
Others?
I'll go, Bradley. So people that have inspired me is a very close girlfriend of mine. She has achieved great heights in fitness, and she really inspires me to be that better person within myself, as in to really have a very my externals to match my internals. So that's been quite the journey through COVID for me to actually find that out. I'd like to think that I inspire the team that I work with. We're on a very big push at the moment for growth in the business. So we're currently at the moment, I'm currently working with the two girls at work to inspire them to look at the job that they do, whether it's a job or whether it's a career for them. And if it's a career, let's make a career. Let's look at it along those lines. So that's something that has come to fruition today, to where we're starting that brainstorm a lister an action plan, and then build on that action plan. So to say that something's rubbed off on me, start with the end in mind. So where you want to be. So that's I think I've got them thinking more about business than I'm just coming to work. So that's how I'd like to see it.
Very good. Who else? Come on, folks. There's 16 of you on here. Somebody else has got to have some people who have inspired them.
Hi, Bradley. It's Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Yes. I think one person really inspired me is Tim Heaviside. Before I joined Fractures, and then I very inspired by Tim. He did good auction. He has a very strong power when he's doing an auction. And after I joined Fractures, and then he have more thing very inspired me. And then he is the person he pilots the machine. Whatever, when you call him, sometimes during the 9 o'clock, and then he always pick up the phone. And yeah, Tim is really inspired.
Timbo's one of those people who, you know, leads by example. He's a really hard worker. He does the right thing all the time. He helps when he's asked. And that's that lead by example, and that's a very powerful role model, someone who does that. You know, you hear about the sporting guys who never says anything. He's just the hardest trainer. He gets there the earliest, always, you know, follows the game plan, you know, leads by example. Thank you. Who else?
I'll go Bradley if you like. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hi, Sarah. Yeah, go.
Yeah, Sarah. So I guess in the workplace, I don't want to sound like a total wanker, but Bradley generally inspires me, and I've learned a lot from Bradley throughout the years. I've definitely been inspired by my dad in terms of, you know, what I try to achieve, and, you know, education and things like that, and my mum for her work ethic. Outside of, you know, those people, I'm inspired by people like Turi and stuff like that, who overcome, you know, really like shocking things, or, you know, even those people who lose a child or something like that, and they actually turn their experiences around, no matter how negative, into something positive. And yeah, I don't know if I inspire people, but I certainly in the workplace try to lead by example. So yeah.
Excellent. Oh, I think you've inspired a whole team of people to do a lot more, and for sure you do. And again, you lead by example. You're very knowledgeable about what you do, and all those things pay off. Thank you. Anyone else like to before we move on? This will start talking. It's just a bit quiet for the first few seconds.
Now, of course, people ask me all the time. They say to me, what is the secret to success? The first rule is trust yourself. But what is most important is that you have to dig deep down and ask yourselves, who do you want to be? Not what, but who. And I'm talking about not what your parents and teachers want you to be, but you. I'm talking about figuring out for yourselves what makes you happy, no matter how crazy it may sound to the people. Number one is, of course, trust yourself, no matter how and what anyone else thinks. And of course, rule number two is break the rules. We have so many rules in life about everything. I say break the rules, not the law, but break the rules. It is impossible to be a maverick or a true original if you're too well behaved and not want to break the rules. You have to think outside the box. That's what I believe. After all, what is the point of being on this earth if all you want to do is be liked by everyone and avoid trouble? The only way that I ever got any place was by breaking some of the rules. Which of course brings me to rule number 3. Don't be afraid to fail. Anything I've ever attempted, I was always willing to fail. So you can't always win, but don't be afraid of making decisions. You can't be paralyzed by fear or failure, or you will never push yourself. You keep pushing because you believe in yourself and in your vision. And you know that it's the right thing to do, and success will come. So don't be afraid to fail. Which brings me to rule number 4, which is don't listen to the naysayers. I mean, how many times have you heard that you can't do this and you can't do that and it has never been done before? I love it when someone says that no one has ever done this before, because then when I do it, that means that I'm the first one that has done it. So pay no attention to the people that say it can't be done. I never listen that you can't. I always listen to myself and said, yes, you can. And that brings me to rule number 5, which is the most important rule of all. Work your butt off. Leaving no stone unturned. Muhammad Ali, one of my great heroes, had a great line in the 70s when he was asked, how many sit-ups do you do? He said, I don't count my sit-ups. I only start counting when it starts hurting. When I feel pain, that's when I start counting, because that's when it really counts. That's what makes you a champion. That's the way it is with everything. No pain, no gain. So, partying, horsing around. Someone out there at the same time is working hard. Someone is getting smarter and someone is winning. Just remember that. Now, if you want to win, there's absolutely no way around hard work. None of my rules, by the way, of success will work unless you do. I've always figured out that there's 24 hours a day. You sleep 6 hours, and you have 18 hours left. Now, I know there's some of you out there now and says, well, wait a minute, I sleep 8 hours or 9 hours. Well, then just sleep faster, I would recommend. That takes me to rule number 6, which is a very important rule. It's about giving back. Whatever path that you take in your lives, you must always find time to give something back. Something back to your community, give something back to your state or to your country. Let me tell you something, reaching out and helping people will bring you more satisfaction than anything else you've ever done. The world. Remember those 6 rules. Trust yourself, break some rules, don't be afraid to fail, ignore the naysayers, work like hell, and give something back.
I don't know. Maybe it's my laptop, Sarah. I don't know. I just have so much trouble moving these slides. All right. Number 2, the law of influence. And that really, if you can't influence people to move in one direction or another, you're not really leading. So it's like, the critical success factor is being able to influence people. I mentioned earlier in these sessions about implied and expressed leaders. An express leader is someone who is the manager. They've got the title. They're the captain of the football team, and they've got an official title. The implied leader is the one, though, that people actually are influenced by and may follow. It may be someone in the department who knows more than the manager because they've been around a long time and really understand what you do. They might be the hardest working player on the football team who inspires people by their work ethic. Some people can be both, because express leaders can also, whilst they are in the title, they are really seen to be the person who knows what they're on about, and in a way they're the implied leader as well. Where you have a real conflict often is where you have an express leader who's really not the right person for the job, not doing a great job, and you have a really good implied leader on the sideline, and other people want to follow and listen to them rather than that, and it creates conflict. That happens in work, it happens in sporting situations. You can see that happening, in lots of different circumstances. But whether you're expressed or implied, if you can get people to follow you, then it's important. The concept of to move me, you need to influence me is a very powerful belief in the whole structure of this. If you know, if you can't move me, get me excited about something, then you're probably um, not gonna, have a real effect. And we see in all things, coaches, the NBA, I think at the end of the season there were 9 fired coaches, and most of the ones that are going to be rehired, and already 2 or 3 that have been rehired, are ones that were fired from one team or hired by another team. And the goal is to try to get people listening again, maybe a different voice, some different methodology. It's not to say that that coach is better than that coach. It's just no longer moving the people, no longer influencing them to do what needs to be done. As Francis Bacon said many centuries ago, knowledge is power. The more people know, the more you help them to grow, then the more powerful you become. And I feel that way in a lot of things. In fact, one of the first articles I ever got published in Australia was in my HR days. I wrote a whole article about change management, and I used this quote from Francis Bacon: "Knowledge is power, so why not empower your people by providing them with knowledge?" I think the more people know, the more they respect you. If you have a vendor or a landlord, and the more you help educate them to understand the situation, the more power you have, because they feel like, wow, I can really trust this person. They really influence me. If you're in a situation with someone selling their home and you say, when's the last time we sold a home? Oh, this is our first one, or we haven't sold one in 10 years. The more you can help them understand the process and what's going to go on and all of that, then the more effective they will be in helping you to help them, because the less they know and less they understand, the harder it is for you to really influence them. So the more time you spend educating them on the process, then the easier it is to get your job done. That's a really good little saying there about, it's not the position that makes it, it's the person that makes the position, really. And we've all had people in a title of manager or boss, and we've seen a whole spectrum, the whole bell curve, from really bad to okay to, we've seen everything to outstanding. We've all had that through teachers, coaches, managers at work. And, look at the teachers that you went to school with and which ones influenced you and which ones didn't. Which did you work harder for in the classroom? Those that influenced you, or those that you didn't like and didn't influence you? Same thing at work. You work harder for managers you like. I remember when I worked in the supermarket, I worked really hard regardless of who was managing. But if Terry or Sally, which were 2 of the 4 managers, were working, I was extra on my toes because I really liked them and wanted to make sure the shift went really well for them. And that's what you do, and you work hard for those people you like and those people who influence you and help you and who, make you feel inspired. Take a minute on your exercise to think about, what influences you at work and in your personal life. What gets you motivated? What gets you doing your best? What gets you doing things you didn't think you can do? What gets you challenged to do new things? It's a good exercise. It's a little bit like doing tens. It's thinking about those good things. What gets you going? And then I wouldn't mind if you wanted to share a little bit of that. That would be good, but you don't have to. Okay. Anyone prepared to share? Let's hear from somebody different, guys. There's plenty of you online here who like to talk a little bit about what influences them and at work and personal life.
Yeah, I'll go, Bradley. I think at work, the people that you surround yourself with are a big influence. So you might look up to someone and strive to be a bit like them. I think that's a massive influence. They want you to get better, you want to get better. So you hang around with those sort of people. I'd say that's a major influence.
Yeah, and that's, I'm a massive believer in role models. I think when you work with people who you admire and you see how they go about doing it, and you like them because they treat you well, then they're really great people to have around and motivate you. As they say that you're the sum of the 5 people that you're nearest around you. And when you work in an office that, like, you guys have arguably one of the most cohesive offices in our Fletcher's group, Blackburn, and everyone's firing. You guys work really well together. Ben and Rob are very inspirational, and it rubs off. I can tell you 3-4 years ago, they weren't focused on their people. They were just focused on themselves, and they didn't have a great team. And it's turned around considerably because they focused more outwardly. Who else has comments?
Yeah, Bradley, it's Mike. I think along the lines of your sporting analogies and things, I always grew up playing a lot of team sports, and I think that I carry that into my work environment as well. And I think that's something that does influence me and is important, is the teamwork. And I think sales is a bit of an up and down emotional roller coaster at times. And I think having the team support, at various times someone's firing and someone's down. And I think, you look at Melbourne Storm, and they won, last night, and a lot of the players commented on how hard it's been this year, but they managed to draw on each other and get through that. And I think it's very much the same in a work environment.
Yeah, for sure. We do prop each other up. We give each other motivation. I mean, that's one of the arguments about group prospecting, because it's hard to prospect and doing with other people. And the reason why, it's great to have a couple hours together, listening to other people on the phone and being motivated by them. And, yeah, you're right. Who else has comments?
Yeah, I just at work, Bradley, I thought, certainly leaders that lead by example in the first instance. And I think also, I guess, diversity in your work and working on new things from time to time that keeps it fresh and interesting. And, being, I guess, pushed into those sort of, I guess, uncomfortable new grounds. And in the personal life, I'd probably say similar, probably, leaders who practice what they preach and lead by example and give a good showing.
Yeah, and you've talked about a couple of things there, the leaders, but also just being challenged yourself. And that's really comes back to the people around you too. Do they see that? Do they see that somebody needs a new challenge? Give them some more responsibility. Do you seek that out yourself? And do they then respond and say, yeah, that's great, we can give you more? And, I mentioned that partner I worked with at Arthur Young when I first became HR, and he was an older guy, and he wasn't the best communicator. But I went to see him after a year in the job, and I said, Gordon, I feel a lot more in sync with the job now. I can handle it. I feel really good about what I'm doing. And he said, well, think about, this juggling analogy that, you're as a kid, you're trying to juggle with 3 balls, and then you try to do 4 or 5, your hands are only so big, but as you grow, your hands get bigger and bigger, you can juggle with more balls. And I always thought that, that's what it's about. We keep growing, and if we can make sure that our responsibilities and our challenges grow with us, then we can stay motivated. When we get ahead of that, where our challenges, responsibilities are maybe beyond us, we get frustrated, we can get a bit demotivated. And likewise, when they're falling behind, then it's a problem. I always say to somebody in sport, if you want to get better, play with people who are better than you. because you'll learn more, you'll grow more. Anyone else like to comment?
Bradley, from my perspective, I think you've obviously had a big influence on who I am at work at Fletcher's, but also past leaders and past CEOs have had a big impact on probably how I feel about work today and how I operate. You know, it's you and others have helped me be more confident and not afraid to try new things and take on new roles and things.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that. And I think that, we're all a product of those people in our lives that had influence on us over time, starting with, some of our earliest teachers and coaches and family members and working our way through, we try to take hopefully the best messages we get from those people and forget the bad ones, to grow and become the person we are. But a good leader really should influence, encourage, push people to do more. Sarah, I don't mean to, but Sarah has grown so incredibly much, in this role at Fletcher's. I remember when she first started, she'd been a floater, going from firm to firm, and very quiet and no real interest in a permanent role. And she was doing sales tech stuff, and then we put her into marketing, and she started to really grow. And the person today is just not even it's hardly the same person. And likewise,
Now,
her
now I'm a
skill set-
nightmare.
yeah, and what she's done for our team is like the expansion of how much we do has been incredible. And I've seen that, and how much you've influenced those around you to come out and be the same. Anyone else have a comment before we move on?
Bradley, I think just,
Oh.
sorry.
You go, Mike.
Thank you. Just an observation too. I think one of the things that struck me with your leadership is the calmness and the that calming influence that comes through. And I think having worked with other leaders that are a bit more volatile, who are more demanding of people rather than influencing and calm, I think that really comes through the whole organisation. So just an observation, but I think a very important thing in a good leader.
Thank you for that. And yeah, not always, but I think it's really important to set the tone, and don't sweat the small stuff, they say. Think about the 10s, the 25s, all of those things. Think about the influence you have on people. Think about what your attitude does, particularly in times when people might be a bit afraid, concerned, unsure of the future. The more calm you can be, the more you can be that influencer in a positive way, is, I think, really important. And I have incredible admiration for Tim and Rob Fletcher, for both of them. I've loved working with both of them. Tim was a real hothead, though, like very different than Rob. I mean, Rob's so calm and easy to be with. Tim was very, very volatile. When I first came to Fletcher's, it was a very harsh environment. And it was one of the things I worked with Tim a lot on, about calming down, and he would really scare people, and that was his style. And it was old school. It was his style. And I had to really change the culture at Fletcher's, and I had to start with changing Tim. And we spent a lot of time together, and we made a lot of deals. In other words, how we'd work together and how we would, for example, we made a deal that he was not going to talk to any staff member about issues without talking to me first. So he wouldn't just rush off and tear strips off somebody because they lost the listing, or they put the wrong name on a letter or something, because he was, pretty high standard, very demanding. But he had created a culture where the people who had get up and go got up and left because they didn't want that, So we worked to calm Fletcher's down, to go for the long game, even things out. One of the things I most admire about Tim Heaviside is his growth of learning how to manage this incredible incline and incredible workload by being very calm. And he's naturally calm, but he's learned to just have a good pace. He doesn't get too high with wins. He doesn't get too low with losses. He just stays calm. He stays through it. And he's able to work through a great deal. And, you know, I don't know his number yet at the moment because I've lost track, but I think he's at 15 listings this month, new listings. Think about that. That's more than most of our offices have, just him. You know, last year his numbers made him the second biggest office in the Fletcher's group. And he stays very calm. And I think that's really important. The idea of it's a process is like steps, and the diagram there is perfect. You know, it doesn't happen all at once. You don't all of a sudden become captain of the football team. You've done all these things. You've demonstrated you can. You've gone to the workshops. You've gone to leadership camps. You might have been deputy captain, you know, assistant captain, and then, you know, captain of the front line or the back line, and then you slowly move up. It's about developing, and it's about becoming better and better at it, and managing yourself well, and then managing another person, and then managing maybe another person, and it grows on you. You know, when we first put Sarah in the management role of marketing, that wasn't her thing, and she had to learn to manage the team and manage people. She was a doer and became a great doer and expander, and then all of a sudden she's now having to manage people. And we had previous managers in that team who never mastered it, how to do it, never got very good at it. And it isn't something that just happens without working on it. And it's just like anything else, you know, you get your hands bigger by growing and getting better. And think about yourself as a first-year salesperson versus a fifth year, or a first-year property manager versus a 10th-year property manager, and how much more you know. It's been a process of growing. Leadership's the same thing, you know. If you want to get better at it, you work at it, you know. And it's not the same thing like every day you're being a salesperson, or you're being a property manager, or you're doing internet marketing, or you're processing listings, isn't the same as dedicating some time to getting better at actually managing and leading people. That's a theory thing. That's something you got to read about. You got to watch videos. You got to go to courses like this. You got to do the assignments. You got to focus on it. You got to think, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to actually manage somebody a little bit better. I'm going to focus on them, talking to them about what I could do to help them be better at their job. You know, how can I work with them to be more effective? What am I doing that's helping you? What am I doing that's not helping you? Those sort of things help you to improve as a leader. And it is a process of developing yourself to be able to do that. Being a learner all the time is really important. You guys can't know, honestly, how many books I've read, how many courses I've been on, how much study I've done over time on management and leadership. You know, I used to keep track. You know, at one point I'd read over 100 biographies of leaders. You know, I know over a 10-year period, at one point I did over 800 hours of continuing education. And so much of it was on leadership and management. And, you know, I've done so much work with Covey and so much with DeBono and Maxwell and other leaders. And it's not something that just happens. You work really hard on it. That's what was funny about the person who came to see me, who's earning a really good income in their 40s, saying, well, why can't I do your job? Why can't I be CEO of a large company? And I said, well, and he gave me 3 examples of people that are doing it in our industry. And I said, you know, I have a 5-year degree in business administration, and I've spent the last 20 years working my way up in organizations. This other guy was at a big accounting firm as well, like me. He then was at a major bank and was running a whole department before he started to do this. How do you compare that to you being a one-man band doing what you do? How can you see it's the same? You're not putting these steps in place to actually do it. And in your own business, you had one person work for you, and it didn't work. So, you know, it's about steps. Start baby steps and work your way up to being more effective to do it. Awareness is is that point there. You know, if you don't know how people perceive you, then you can't be getting better. If you don't understand other people around you and what influences them, then you can't be getting any better. Um, you know, it's the age-old thing. I haven't thought of this for a long time, but let me see if first you start out as a as an unconscious incompetent. In other words, there's 5 steps. In other words, you don't know what you don't know. Then you become a conscious incompetent where you realize that, hey, I don't know these things and I should be getting better. And then you become an unconscious incompetent or competent, sorry, conscious competent, where you start to focus on being competent in your role. Then you become an unconscious competent where you just do it and you just do your role well. And those stages of going from completely unaware of what you don't even know to being good at what you do without having to focus on it, it just happens, is a step process. It's a whole process that you have to work your way through. So those of you that aspire to want to be better leaders, to want to manage the people around you more effectively, your children, your family, your work colleagues, maybe if you're on a football team or a netball team or whatever, then you have to work at it and you have to understand those around you and understand yourself. And the more you can do that and understand both parties, the more you have a chance to influence, lift the lid, influence, and so forth. So, you know, it is about learning. And I have to give you guys a funny little anecdote. When I was an accountant and I was an auditor working for a big international accounting firm, and I was working in the Melbourne office at this point. And when you didn't have work to do, you sat in the audit room if you were, you know, had no jobs you were assigned to. And one day I was sitting in the audit room and there were all sort of low desks. And I was reading the business book called In Search of Excellence, which was written by Tom Peters, was one of the most famous business books ever. And it was really groundbreaking. And it was about how companies achieve excellence. And I was reading this business book, working in an accounting firm as an accountant, servicing clients, and I was told that I wasn't allowed to do that. And I said, why? It's a business book. And they said, well, it's not an accounting book. And our rules manual says very clearly that if you're going to read during business hours, it has to be an accounting book. And I said, I'd only been in Melbourne for a short time. I'd come from the Beverly Hills office of the same company. And I said, all right, so let me just see what you're saying to me. This is a manager. These guys are playing football with wads of paper and they're kicking the football around this room. And I can't sit here and read a business book about learning to be better at understanding companies that are successful. That's what you're telling me? And he said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I said, well, here's what I'm telling you. And this is a gospel, what I said. I said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to renovate my new house I bought. And I'll probably read a little bit at night, books like this. And if you have a job for me to do, you call me and I'll come back in and I'll do it. And I left. And I went home and I renovated for about 6 weeks, I think, before I got my next assignment. And imagine that, a company thinking like that. I've always had a learning mentality. I've always wanted those around me to have a learning mentality, to grow and be better and do things. So part of, I think, Fletcher's culture has come from my sort of thinking that to be really good at your job, you got to be rounded. You know, it's not just one dimensional. So a good salesperson isn't just good because they can understand real estate law or they can close a deal. They're good because they can relate to people. They can relate to their colleagues. They can communicate effectively. They know how to run their practice, you know, and it's all a process of learning and growing to get better at what you do. If at any time you want to interject, please do, guys. So we're going to talk about lots of things that I've added along the way to the Maxwell laws to incorporate good human resource and learning practices into it. And this module would be very quick, the whole Maxwell, if I just went off his stuff. So there's a lot of my stuff in here as well that I've built in over time because I think it makes it a lot more effective. for everybody. So effective delegation is really, really critical. It's the only way in which you can go up, because you have to give up to go up, as Stephen Covey says, in that servant leader. If you're not giving something up to, you don't get better. You don't have the time because you can't do everything. And so, you think about in a delegation, is there somebody who's better to do this job than me? And it's not necessarily because they're better, it might just be more effective because they're more cost effective. They could learn from it. Remember, the people paradigm is to develop people through the accomplishment of tasks. And so if you can help develop somebody to now be able to do that job better and you're not having to do it, because remember, as Ed said, as you grow and you want to take on more things, sometimes you got to leave things behind. And, if you're always still trying to do all that stuff, you're really not growing and you're not having the time to grow. And so is there someone better than you? And that's that more effectively than you can do it. Is there someone who's going to benefit from doing it, that just because they're going to get the experience and they're going to grow from it? The very fact that you're delegating something usually suggests you can probably do it. But are you the best person to do it? Or is somebody going to benefit from doing it?
Graduation next weekend. We'll graduate 1,500 students at the undergraduate and graduate level. What advice do you give to those young women and men who are going out, perhaps?
I just want to, phrase this. This is Jack Welch. He's the retired CEO of General Electric. And he is responsible, and he's considered one of the top, I think, 2 or 3 greatest CEOs of the 20th century. And he was responsible for growing GM from being a big Fortune 500 company to being an incredible global company that was number 1 or number 2 in every market they were in the world. And he was just incredible. And he's going to talk for a few minutes on just what advice he would give.
For their first job in today's environment?
Well, I've been on this circuit for a while, and I've thought about it. And I have 3 things I like to tell young graduates today. And one of the things is that schools, in some ways, while they prepare them so well, they also have one flaw that sticks with people. The first thing is over-deliver. Every time a student when you work in a business and you're asked to do something, if you just do what the boss asked you to do, you will end up just confirming what the boss wanted to have written down. They already knew the answer when they asked the question. So your job in a new job is to over-deliver. Give them new perspectives. When anybody asks them, schools ask you for a problem solving in a case, or anything, then they ask you the questions. So you answer the questions. You don't get the answer. You don't get the questions in business. You have to develop a perspective that's wider. And I always tell the story of my first job. I was a project manager in a little plastic operation in Pittsfield, Mass. And my boss from New York was coming up to see, not my boss, my boss's boss, and they wanted me to come in one of those white shirt pitches to present the cases for my new plastic. Tell them where I was going. So I got all prepared and everything else. But what I did do was I didn't talk about my project alone. I talked about the 10 plastics in the industry, where they were going to be in 5 years, their cost structure, from Dow, Celanese, DuPont, etc. I developed that package, and I gave my boss's boss this picture of the industry. I think that's how I got noticed there. I got out of the pile because I didn't just give him my project report. Here's what I did yesterday, here's what I did tomorrow, here's what we'll do next day. I gave him a perspective and made him look smarter. He now knew more about the industry than he ever knew. And that's what you want to do. You always want to over-deliver. Never do what the assignment is. Do more than that. Wider, new insights, new horizons. Secondly, you got to walk around with a positive attitude. No one wants a black cloud around them all day. If you're a sourpuss, get rid of it. Don't bring it to work. It's a disaster. It's a career killer. Just don't do it. And the third thing is, don't be ambitious. Be ambitious, but don't be ambitious to the point that it's on your forehead in a neon sign. Don't do it. Do it privately. Have all the ambition in the world, but don't go in and rub it in everyone's nose. So with those three things, over-deliver, a positive attitude, and don't wear ambition on your forehead, I think you'd be off to a pretty good start.
That's great. And how about mentor?
I want to tell you two things that have always really stood out massively to me in these sort of leaders, and one is from Jack Welch and one is from Bill Gates. Jack Welch, when technology really took off in the 90s, and those of you who don't really remember, really until the 90s, even in the 80s, we had computers, but there was no internet. There was really no nothing like when the 90s hit, and all of a sudden the internet came, and there was just such a massive change to everything. And Jack Welch recognized that what made GE great was they had this incredible group of managers around the world who were all these white collar worker guys, mostly guys, to be frank, engineers, all these people who were running all these divisions who were all in their 50s. They were all baby boomers. And he realized that there's no way in the world that they could become different. And the divisions would soon, which was the electrical age, would soon fall way behind in the information age, which the internet brought in. And he did something that I thought was an incredibly innovative thing to do, is he made every one of his top 300 managers running divisions around the world employ a recent university graduate from IT to be their assistant and work directly for them in their office. That's that, all of a sudden in those days they were, Gen X, but talking about now putting a Y in your office of every CEO so they could actually start to understand, well, hang on, you could do this better with this technology. You could do this with this technology. Think about that. That's what he wanted to achieve, and create that a massive change of culture instantly by having someone. And in fact, they were put in a really powerful position, these PAs, these graduates. They weren't to be shut up. They were like, I can't remember exactly, but they were given a lot of power. And in fact, they had power to veto what the manager was doing in cases like where they weren't evolving. The other example was 1996 or 97, when the World Wide Web hit, and Microsoft was one of these dinosaur companies that were all of a sudden, like IBM, in danger of missing the next technology revolution. And in fact, believe it or not, I think every single technology market leader in history has missed the next cycle. And I could go through lots of examples, but they happen all the time. IBM missed the PC revolution. Nokia missed the smartphone revolution. Kodak missed the digital camera revolution. It's just, Blockbuster missed the whole on-demand TV revolution, one after another. And Bill Gates said in 1997, let's call it, he got all of his leading people from all over the world together, and he said, and there was like 300 or 500 people in the room, and he said, as of today, any project you're working on for Microsoft that doesn't have an internet application stops today. If it can't be on the internet, it doesn't exist. I don't care how much money we've spent. I don't care what we've done on it. It's dead. Start over today as an internet application. Every single thing we do. Thought, wow, that was a great way to stop your company from becoming the next dinosaur. Great leaders challenge things, He challenged 300 managers from around the world who are all these old, stodgy, baby boomers, not listening and not understanding technology, to all of a sudden be almost reporting to a graduate. And Bill Gates, obviously, as well, what he did. That's why I read all his biographies. You learn so much from these people. I want to talk about delegation as a group because it's a really important thing, and very few people really delegate effectively and understand it. You know, what are the reasons why we don't delegate to someone? Just throw out a reason and turn your mic on and then turn it off. Like, why don't we delegate?
Trust.
What do you mean by cost? Whoever said cost, what do you mean by that?
I said trust.
Oh, trust. Sorry. Yeah, you don't trust them to do the job right?
Trust. Yep. Trust the person to execute the job right.
Yeah. All right.
Bradley, someone might do a better job than you.
Yeah. You become obsolete.
Yeah.
What else?
Ego.
Yeah.
There may not be the resources there to delegate to.
Yeah, sometimes there's just no one around to do it to.
Loss of control.
Yeah. They're all good answers. They're all real. So
Bradley, I guess the other one is where they sit on the disc profile.
Yeah.
Whether you have someone, you know, that you delegate to that's a C, that's going to be you know, very orderly and get things done.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's a time to show someone what to do. You know, you might not have the time, it's quicker for you to do it. So sometimes we don't share the knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's another one, just sharing the knowledge. Some people like to take control and not share what they know and pass on to other people. There's a couple of things there.
Sure. Yeah. Those are all really good answers. I mean that, like all of them. And, you know, the not trusting someone to do the job right comes back to character and competence. It comes back to training. You know, if you trust yourself as a good manager and a leader, then you probably have more confidence in trusting them to do it. And you know, becoming obsolete, you know, doing yourself out of a day job is not a bad thing because it allows you to get up and do more. So, you know, that's a little bit of a, you know, I'm sure tongue in cheek, but it's true. You know, you can sometimes fear that the person below you is going to do a better job than you. But if it's something that you're delegating, it's probably something that somebody else below you should do. And therefore, if they do a really good job, you know, this is true. When I was director of personnel at Arthur Young, I was an accountant, and then I got moved into the personnel role. And I wanted to hire a personnel manager to hire all of the sales and all the support staff in the office because I was focusing on the professionals. And one of the partners came to see me, and smart partner, tax partner, and he said, I hear you want to hire a personnel manager. You don't really want to hire someone who's qualified in human resources, though, do you? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they're going to show you up because you're not qualified. You're just an accountant doing this job. And I said, do you really think that way? He said, absolutely. He goes, I would never have anyone in my department smarter than me. And I said, well, I want to have the best team around me possible. I'm going to go out and find the most qualified HR person I can absolutely find and let them run wild. You know, I succeeded as an auditor because the team underneath me were all a lot smarter than I was. They were all smarter accountants than I was, you know. So a lot of people have that issue about, you know, lack of trust, becoming obsolete, letting your ego get in the way. Sometimes it's resources. Sometimes there just isn't the proper person to delegate to. There isn't the resources. But, you know, if you look a little bit more widely, if you challenge yourself, sometimes you can find the resources. You can find your teenage kids happy to do your database work for you. You can find the team has a global person who can do a lot of the work for you. you just have to ask. And tell you what, there's a lot of resources around Fletcher's if you just ask the right questions. Control is a big one. People feel that by delegating, they're losing control. But if we do it right, and we're not abdicating, which is the next line, delegation does not mean abdication. If we don't abdicate, we can usually still keep control over the output very well. Obviously, DISC, having the right person, knowing the right profile to delegate to, picking the right people that are going to work for you and do the job is really, really important. Sue raised a couple things, but one is about this issue of time. You don't have the time to do it, which is one of the biggest reasons why people don't delegate. Either I do it better and I can do it just as quick if it takes as much time to delegate as if I just do it. So I'm just going to do it. But they use that line 55 times. And after the second time, the economies of scale were no longer there, because after the second time, it would have been cheaper had they spent the time to teach the other person. So one is having the time to do it. One is the time it takes to do it. I appreciate they're different things, but that's a really major thing that people say. I can do it faster myself. But the reality is then you're always doing it yourself, and you have to give up to go up. This thing, third point that's just come up here, lost my little red pointer. Delegation is not abdication, is absolutely critical to being successful in what we do. Because if we abdicate, in other words, we give somebody the responsibility without the supervision, then we have a problem. So, Sarah, one thing you could teach me as you use Zoom more is how I use the whiteboard in this classroom. Don't do it now, but maybe I should learn, because it'd be useful. There's a whiteboard feature somehow. But let me say that I have this theory of delegation that I created. And that theory of delegation, I really believe is super sound as far as leading people. That is that, let's call the challenge of the job A to Z. And every job's different, but it's A to Z, right? There's things that you have to do. A is the easiest, Z's the most advanced. So I'm a new graduate, and you give me A, and you sit down and explain to me what I have to do, and you give me some background, and I do A, and you go, hey, that guy's pretty good doing A. And then you got someone else in your team, and you delegate something that's B, and they get B done, and they do it pretty well. And then you work with them, and you show them how to do C, and then she does C really quite well for you. And then all of a sudden, your main player is sick and has to have an emergency operation, is going to be out for 2 weeks. And your person you've been delegating to, who's only up to C, now has to do a job that is G. And you give them G because somebody's got to do it, and they don't do it so well. And you think, well, this person really, they're not up to it. It's really your fault as a leader, because they're only up to C. You haven't prepared them to do G. And sometimes you can skip D to get to E, but sometimes you need to do D to get to E. Sometimes you can skip a letter, but generally you have to take people up the steps to be able to do something like that. And so our job as a leader is to help prepare people for those next stages of the work and of what they'll be doing. Because when you delegate to somebody who's unprepared and they flop, it's your fault, not theirs. You've now wasted the time. You've wasted your energy. You don't want to do it the next time. You think, oh, I'll just do it myself, because you didn't give them the time to be effective. Now, I'm going to give you 2 real life examples that really help paint this picture. When I'm at Arthur Young, big 8 accounting firm, budgets are everything. Accountants are into budgets. Don't waste any money. No budget, no waste of time, right? So if you go on any job, you're given a budget of how much time you have. And that time might be 5 hours to do cash. And as I said to you guys before, what they'll do is they'll sit you down, they'll say, read last year's notes. Then I'm going to take you through what's important. And they do that, and they tell you what to look for and what to focus on. And then they say, come back after a half hour and show me what you've done. Because that way, if you've made a mistake and you're doing it wrong, you've only burnt a half hour instead of burning the budget. When I went to the law firm, my first law firm, the way they teach article clerks to do work is completely opposite. They come in and they sit down with the article clerk or first-year lawyer and they say, we have a client who's requested information on X patent. They'd like to understand whether or not blah, blah, blah. Go, do it. I'm not kidding. They gave them no budgets, no expectations of time, no amount of guidance as to what they're supposed to be doing. And the article clerks trying to impress would go away and write a novel on patents. And they would spend 72 hours, 3 days, and 20 hours of chargeable time on this giant project. And they'd give it back to the partner. And the partner would say, all I wanted was a one-line answer. Their budget for this for you was probably a half hour. You spent 3 days doing this? You're completely off. You're just not commercial. Get out of my office. That is a real thing that happened every single day. And when I got there, I just thought, you guys are nuts. You keep saying that the young solicitors aren't commercial. You're not commercial. You're just abdicating responsibility. You think that they're going to learn by this? Wouldn't it be far better to sit and say to them that the client, this is a 1 hour job, guys. This is what I need you to do. This is the focus I want you to take. This is where I want you to go and look. Help them learn to do their job commercially. And then they come back and deliver you what you want, and then you modify and fix and you're done. And I taught that to my law firm to completely change the way they work, because basically I taught them how to delegate as opposed to abdicate. And it financially made a massive difference. When I first got there, we were writing $6 million worth of time off because of that. $6 million worth of time was not being billed. It was just being wasted. And I've seen this so much. When I started with Tim and Rob, they had been abdicating the responsibility for Fletcher's offices to someone who shouldn't have been in that position. And when I started, I said, you're not going to abdicate with me. And we, as I told you guys earlier, we set up a meeting every Wednesday for 2 hours over lunch. We talked about the business. And we talked about decisions to be made, and information sharing. And those were the 3 headings. And I made sure they stayed involved in the business, because I wasn't going to let them abdicate responsibility for how Fletcher's was going to develop. And I think the key here for you guys in understanding effective delegation is that if you don't know what they're doing and you're taking a guess at whether they do it right or not, you've abdicated it. If you can delegate to someone and giving them boundaries and understanding, and you have confidence that they know what they're doing, and you ask them to check in with you at appropriate times, then that's effective delegation. And it allows you to build trust. It allows you to not be obsolete, because you, in fact, are the one who's teaching and growing them. Your ego's satisfied because you've helped someone else grow and develop. You probably have more resources at your fingertips because you're using them effectively. You're absolutely in control. Your time is now far more valuable because you've helped someone grow, and you can move on to do other things, and they can do that effectively. Next time they can just do it, and the next time they can do it. So there's a lot of reasons why effective delegation is one of the keys to all this. So I've covered a lot of that point. We might continue to move on. So to delegate effectively is a little bit like having a good talk to someone in the coaching we did with Covey. You got to think about it a bit. Firstly, you should define the outcome. You know, what are we actually trying to do? And, you know, scope and all of that involves how much time do you have? When would I expect you to be done with this? I always say to people, and I do this now, I sent something to Jackie Litvik the other day. I said, Jackie, I would really like this information, but if it's going to take you more than an hour or 2 to get it for me, don't. I want you to come back and tell me that you can't actually get it out of CAPS with less or more time than that's going to take, because I don't want you to do that. Let's figure out a different way to get what I want. So begin with the end in mind, set boundaries, give resources as expectations. What do we want as the outcome? If you've done a really good job with this, what does it mean? What have you done? How long has it taken you? How much has it costed us? What's the outcome I'm getting? If you can set those boundaries for people, imagine saying to someone when you delegate, I think this should only take you a half hour. If it's going to take you more than that, you're on the wrong track, because that's all it should take. If I did this myself, it'd take me about 15 minutes. It should take you about a half hour. If we got those instructions when we're delegated to, most of the times of our life, we'd probably be a lot better off. Everybody who's involved should be involved, because, you know, if people don't know things, they can't do their job. You can't effectively delegate to people if they don't know, you know, what they're supposed to know. I talk about it. I've written another book that I haven't put out anywhere yet, but in there I talk about an experience I had on a really big client where I found something when I was an auditor, and I found something, and when I told the partner, I told the manager, told the partner, he said, oh, we're supposed to be looking out for that. And I said to him, why didn't I know that? I'm the one out in the field looking at all this stuff. He goes, oh, it's need to know basis only. Well, who needs to know more than the person that's doing the job? So the more you can keep the people involved aware, then the more successful they'll be in doing their job. How are we going to supervise and review this work? When are you going to come back and show me what you're doing? What am I going to talk to you about? Let people know the boundaries. Let them know you expect that I need this by the end of today, and I'd like to see it, and I want to see how you're progressing, or I want to see it can you come back in the next hour and show me how you're progressing with this before you go any further? So I want to make sure it's being done right. Those sort of thinking will help you more effectively delegate. Somebody who talked to, I think it was Mike, who talked about DISC. You know, you got to find the right person to delegate to. That's the starting point. Make sure you got someone who can do the job, do it well. Talk to them about it. Do they have the time? Do they understand what you're wanting? Think ahead, because sometimes you need to book them ahead of time. You need to make sure the resources will be freed up. You need to talk to your colleagues to free up somebody to help you with something. You shouldn't give people a task. You delegate the whole thing, because I don't mean that someone has to do the whole project, but you're beginning with the end in mind. You're telling them what you're really trying to achieve. You're not, think about a receptionist, you know, in terms of saying to a receptionist, can you put that paper away over there? Can you move that book over there? Isn't the same thing as saying to your receptionist, I want reception to look really, really tidy and smart. I'd like you to go out the door and walk in, and you look at what your first impression is of this whole room. And then walk up to the counter and look at the counter and look behind the counter what you can see, and tell me, do you get an impression that this is SMIC? That this is like really gives a great first impression. And when you're greeting people, remember, they're the reason why we're here. So you make sure that everyone walking in feels really important. And when they leave here, they think really positively about Fletcher's as far as what you've been able to contribute. Can you think of it that way? You'll end up with a better outcome. Does that make sense? And I don't think there's enough of that, right? You know, I think there's too much focus on the task. And I get that. I get it that way because I'm very C, so I can start to go into, because I can see the steps involved in things. And I have to back up and say, look, what we're trying to achieve is this outcome. I'll give you some suggestions on some of the steps that I think you can do. I do think that there's a lot of laziness in the workforce. There's a lot of people who don't go through the steps to make things happen. who make, to be frank, the newer generations just want to use email. They don't want to get on the phone and just call somebody. You can solve 50 things on a phone call that take so many times back and forth with an email. And sometimes you need to be very direct with your staff. You need to say, call people, do this, do that. But often the best thing is to begin with the end in mind. What are we trying to achieve? How would you approach this? Yeah, that's a great way to approach this. I agree with that. Off you go. Or hang on, that's really good, but maybe think about this or this and coming out with the outcome. All of those things really help. And Sandy, you have to trust that they can do the job. And if you've given them the right background, then you should have every reason in trusting. And if you put the right controls in place to make sure that you're checking and supervising, then you can have trust that you can get it done.
And now, without further ado, I present the Regional Manager of Dunder Mifflin Scranton, Michael Scott.
Hello, everyone. I am Michael Scott.
Hello, I'm Brandon Hidalgo, CEO of the teaching company.
What you want, cookie?
I burned my foot very badly on my Foreman grill.
Game over. Awesome Blossom. Uh-oh! Better put on your ski boots!
Why are you here? I didn't even invite you to my birthday party.
I work here.
Okay. What is the most inspiring thing I ever said to you?
Don't be an idiot. Changed my life.
I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
Nice job, Bill.
Not.
I worked in a fast food restaurant to save up money for school. And then I lost it in a pyramid scheme.
I don't want to work. I just want to bang on this mug all day. Did you ask? I told Dwight that there is honor in losing, which, as we all know, is completely ridiculous.
Extreme Home Makeover puts together a house in an hour. If you were on that crew, you'd be fired like that.
I do think that I am very approachable, but maybe I need to be even approachabler.
If you never watched The Office, watch it, because it's the perfect lesson on how not to be a manager and a leader, right? So if you just do the opposite.
Sorry, Bradley, I have to interject. He is a lunatic in that show.
It's funny and it's so opposite of everything that you should do as a good manager and a leader. It's perfect training. I think we learn as much from the bad experiences as we learn from good. We take away things from both. Hopefully you can spit out the bad ones and remember them as a lesson rather than the way you want to be. So I really encourage you guys to think about the things we talked about today. We're going to finish on this note. Yeah, we've we've finished this task, this level number 3. If you want to get better, you look at yourself and you say, well, what am I good at and what am I not good at? What can I relate to? What can't I relate to? I want to stretch myself. I want to get a little bit better. I'm going to take a couple of these things today, and I'm going to focus on writing out a good delegation plan for someone I delegate to, so I can really improve the way I do things. And then eventually it becomes more natural for you. I am so lucky to have been grounded in 4 years of Arthur Young's method of working with people, from a managerial right down to the new starters. Even though it was a horrible culture and the job was terrible, I learned so much about effective delegation and managing people in that process that it's helped me my whole career. And a lot of things we talked about today come right out of that. That's where I've written it from, my experiences of doing that sort of stuff. So I encourage you to think about these things. You don't grow unless you do. If you just finish up and you just go on and do your next thing, you don't get better. If you don't put these things in practice, you don't get better. if you don't go back and reflect on the Covey stuff and think, well, you know, I'm working on my PC versus my P, what quadrant am I in? If you don't do those things, then nothing really changes. You know, you're just going to be the same. And your goal of doing this was to grow. Remember what your goals were that you established for yourself, was to grow, to get better, to become better at managing people and leading others and leading yourself, and a lot of things that we heard. And you have to work at it. You know, if you have something that you think you're good at, you work hard at it to be really good at it. If there's something you have limitations, then you work to overcome those limitations. If something's important to you, you focus more on it. Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets done. You know, so you just think that way. All right, any questions or comments before we finish up? Got nothing? All good? All right, well, there won't be any assignment in between this and Wednesday, but Wednesday we'll continue with Maxwell. Have a good night, everybody.
See you, Bradley.
Thanks, Bradley.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a good
Night.
night.